This is Hannibal from thehannibaltv.com with a daily wrestling news update. The big news of the day is it's no secret that I guess Triple H is not the biggest fan of Lashley. He likes to push the smaller guys that don't look as tough, like Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn. And it looks like Lashley is on his way out of WWE, as is MVP, which I guess MVP's last TV appearance was April 3rd, 2023. He's been on a number of house shows since then, but that's one of the weird cases where WWE's pulling like an AEW and just not cutting him loose, but not using him. I've met Bobby Lashley a bunch of times. Great guy. I used to know MVP from Deep South Wrestling. Great guy. Sheldon Benjamin, who's also a free agent. He's wrestled for Great North Wrestling. Great guy. They're the Hurt Business, and apparently MVP is trying to trademark the Hurt Business. It could be a potential faction in AEW. I know AEW has an overloaded roster right now, but a lot of the people on the roster nobody knows, and they aren't really draws. So why don't you cut a bunch of them and bring in the Hurt Business? I think no matter what, they are going to bring them in some form of another, and I hope that they get a better run there than they did in WWE. One of my big disappointments about Lashley's last WWE run is they didn't feud him with Lesnar as soon as he came in, after he was fresh off of a good run in TNA and a really good MMA run. They waited, and then when they did have him wrestle Lesnar, it wasn't really like as competitive a match as it should have been, where I feel like Lashley and Lesnar could have had a better feud. So, I mean, I wish them the best of luck. As I said, all those three guys are great guys. Sheldon's been released for a while, but hasn't really done anything since his release. In other wrestling news, El Desperado, whoever that is injured. And as I previously mentioned in other reports, Sky Blue and Dalton Castle from AEW/Ring of Honor are also injured right now. More information came out from Dave Meltzer's Wrestling Observer Radio on the TNA event in Montreal over the weekend, that actually, according to Meltzer, Saturday night's pay-per-view, Slammiversary Montreal, likely actually had a bigger crowd than the last two AEW tapings in Montreal, which is pretty impressive. And of course, the AEW tapings were at the Bell Center, which is it's like a 20,000 seat arena, whereas like the TNA tapings was at the Verdun Auditorium, which is like a 3,000 or 4,000 seat arena. So I said it back when AEW came in all those months ago to Montreal. I think it was quite a while ago, because the last time they came to Quebec, it was Quebec City. They didn't draw very well in Quebec City either. There's no further dates planned for Canada for AEW at this time. I'm sure they're going to come back, but I can't imagine their Canadian shows in general went that great, based on the fact that there's no future events announced for Canada at this point. But I thought AEW should have gone to the Verdun Auditorium or the Pierre Charbonneau Center, where TNA has ran in the past, back when I promoted TNA in Montreal, because they're smaller buildings. They would have had bigger crowds and they would have packed them. But anyways, the other news that came out of it, there was previously mentioned they had a battle royal of independent wrestlers before the taping on Saturday, where independent wrestlers had to sell a certain amount of tickets to get in the battle royal. Hey, do whatever you have to do to get the people in there. But apparently Carl LeDuc, the son of Paul LeDuc, Carl LeDuc's wrestled for Great North Wrestling a bunch of times. I've wrestled him. He's in the Wrestling with Shadows documentary. Apparently he sold 300 tickets to get in the battle royal, and because he sold the most tickets, they let him win the battle royal. So good for him. By the way, Carl Leduc had the very first match at the Canadian Tire Center in Ottawa, where WWE just had Raw. He beat JBL. That's a piece of trivia. It was very random that he was on a WWE show back in August 2006, or sorry, August 96 at the Canadian Tire Center, and they had him beat JBL in a very quick match randomly. The other thing is for that pay-per-view, I guess some tickets were as low as $10. There's no news on how many they had for their TV tapings last night. It was not as good of a crowd as the pay-per-view, but they went to the same building for the TV tapings last night. They had Moose versus PCO in a casket match in the main event, which PCO won, but apparently it was just basically for the people in attendance. PCO also got married in an angle on the show, but it definitely was not sold out last night, but it was probably still the biggest TV taping crowd they had in a long time. But yeah, tickets, according to Meltzer, were as low as $10 for the pay-per-view. And the WWE NXT guys that were on the pay-per-view actually lost to the TNA guys. So that shows you how close the working relationship is right now with TNA and WWE. A lot of people are baffled that Joe Hendry lost to Dolph Ziggler. Ziggler didn't win the title because Henry's like the guy with the most buzz in the whole company right now. But it could be a case where they had this booking decision planned for a while and they just didn't want to change despite the buzz that Henry has right now, which I find bizarre because they made Dolph Ziggler the champion. Everyone remembers him as the WWE's jobber. I mean, there's no doubt he's a good wrestler, but as far as buzz, Joe Hendry has a lot more buzz about him. As far as the Hogan speech at the Republican convention, according to Meltzer, there's been no negative blowback about it. Only people talking positive. So people have pretty much it's blown over all of the negativity about Hogan. As far as AEW Collision's new theme song, they got rid of the Saturday Night's All Right for Fighting song because I guess they didn't want to continue paying the rights fees. I heard the new song, and I really don't like the new song that they're using for Collision. I have to say this. And apparently a lot of people don't like it. And the music guy put out a post saying, "We're keeping it whether people like it or not." Okay. That's a great way to keep your fans. Maybe some people like it, but as I said, I heard it. I didn't like it. And if I did like it, I would say it. By the way, I got confirmation. Even though supposedly the Von Erichs are going to wrestle as part of this residency in Arlington, Texas, as AEW, they did not use them for some reason on the Collision tapings. And I'm not hating on AEW. I'll tell you if I like the music. I have no reason to put over this Joe Hendry guy. No reason at all. TNA people don't like me. WWE people don't like me. I'm putting him over. I said I like his singing. I think it's good. And I will say, like, unbiasedly, that I do not like the AEW Collision theme song. I think it's crap. And I think it's funny that the guy put out a statement saying, "We're keeping it whether you guys like it or not." By the way, Jake Paul dominated his fight over the weekend, his boxing fight. No word on how the pay-per-view did, but they had over 17,000 people in the building in Tampa. A lot of people are kind of getting sick of these celebrity boxing fights. I did not see the highlights of Josh Barnett's Bloodsport Bushido, but I did interview Josh Barnett, and I really enjoyed the interview. I have a lot of respect for Josh Barnett.